Hey, good morning, everybody. We are starting on page Yud-Tet, Amud Bet. Today's daf is Yud-Tet, but we're starting at the very bottom of Yud-Tet, Amud Bet. Tanur Rabbanan, Beit Shammai Omrim. This is 3 lines from the bottom. Beit Shammai says, Lo yimkor adam chametzo lenochri, ela imken yodea bo sheyichle kodem haPesach. Divrei Beit Shammai, that Beit Shammai say, that does seem a little bit superfluous. Obviously, it doesn't have to say Divrei Beit Shammai after it already said Beit Shammai Omrim. One or the other would be correct.
Unless they're quoting previous position or something.
No, there's a note on the side that one or the other should definitely be is definitely superfluous. Divrei Beit Shammai is taken out by most of the commentaries. So, in any case, a person should not sell their chametz to a non-Jew unless they are confident that this chametz will be consumed before Pesach. Obviously, this is similar to some of the other halachot that we have seen, where Beit Shammai places restrictions on what you can give to the Gentile. You have to know that he is going to get to his destination before Shabbat. You have to know that he's going to finish whatever he needs to do with your vessels that you lend him before Shabbat. So similarly, that is your chametz. So even though you sold it to the non-Jew, you should only sell it to him if you know that he's going to finish it before Shabbat. So before Pesach. So clearly, our mechirat chametz of today would be not valid at all according to Beit Shammai. According to Beit Hillel, they say as long as you're allowed to eat the chametz, you can sell it. Which means to say that even if you sell it 5 minutes before, you're not allowed to eat it anymore. Even though you know that the non-Jew is going to eat it through Pesach, he's going to be eating your chametz through Pesach. The fact is, it's not your chametz, and you're not responsible for the chametz. Once it's out of your domain, and you don't have to worry that you transferred it, that the non-Jew is now consuming quote-unquote your chametz, because as soon as you sell it, it's not your chametz anymore. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Kutach HaBavli Chol Minei Kutach Asur Lemkor Lamed Yom Kodem HaPesach. That according to Rabbi Yehuda, it goes even further than this, that Kutach HaBavli, this was a type of dip that they used to use that had breadcrumbs of some sort inside of it, some kind of old bread that they would put inside the dip, and so this stored for a very long time. So if you sold somebody your kutach, that meant you were selling them something that they're going to have in their refrigerators, or they didn't have refrigerators back then, but that they're going to have around for quite a long time, because it was only eaten in small quantities. It was a dip for other foods. So 30 days before Pesach, you would have to sell that to the non-Jew, because you want to make sure that he completes it, he finishes it in advance. In fact, Rashi says even more than that. He says that the reason why it says 30 days is because you're only responsible to be thinking about Pesach 30 days before Pesach. But really, this kutach could be something that's around even longer than 30 days. It's just that the Chachamim are not going to come along and tell you to sell your chametz more than 30 days in advance of Pesach, because they don't want, they're not placing you in the mindset, so to speak, of Pesach that far in advance. But the basic point here is that according to Beit Shammai and according to Rabbi Yehuda, a person is responsible for their chametz. Once it's 30 days before Pesach, that chametz is credited to you. And if you're going to sell it to a non-Jew, even if you give it to the non-Jew, if he's going to be eating it on Pesach, it still has a connection to you. So you need to either sell it more than 30 days before Pesach, or you need to make sure that you've given the non-Jew ample time to finish eating it before Pesach, so it's not, so to speak, on your account when he's eating it. But that is not the halakha. The halakha follows Beit Hillel, that you can sell chametz right up to the minute before the time is up on Erev Pesach. Then Rabbanan the rabbis taught, notnim mizonot lefnei hakelev v'chatzer netelo v'yatza en nizkakin lo. You can place food if you are in a courtyard. A courtyard is a place that is enclosed, therefore you're allowed to carry things in the courtyard. We know that. You can place food in front of a dog in the courtyard, and the dog will come along and it will eat the food. And if he takes it and he carries it out of the courtyard, it's not your problem. You didn't give this dog a job and say, here, I want you to carry my stuff from one place to another. He took the food and he left. That's okay. Similarly, and even if a human being comes and you feed him, for example, Tosafot says a poor person, that you're feeding in your courtyard on Shabbat, so you're giving him food, and that's a mitzvah to feed non-Jewish poor together with the Jewish poor. So even though we said before you're not supposed to give an article or sell an article or lend an article to a non-Jew on Shabbat in your house, if he's going to carry it out of your house on Shabbat, it looks like he's taking your stuff for you to go somewhere. So we don't apply that to food. If you served food in the courtyard and the Gentile takes the food, his own food, and he walks out, it's not your responsibility. We don't look at it as he's taking your stuff and he's carrying your stuff out with him on your behalf, like you're sending him on a mission to do something. Yes?
What about if he carries it into your house, into your door?
No, that's for sure okay, but we're talking about a concern that like it looks like he's doing work for you. If he's, we know. So if he leaves your area, he leaves your yard, so then it looks like he's doing work for you on Shabbat. So that's true if he carries anything else. But if he carries food, it's obvious that he's eating the food. So he's not doing it for you. Into your house is okay. Into your house is okay. Just out, yeah, because that's all. No, for sure not. We're not even dealing with that. But no, this is your food, so it's all everything is okay. It's just that we don't want it to look like the non-Jew is doing an errand for you on Shabbat. So if he carries other things out on Shabbat, it might look like either you're selling stuff on Shabbat and you sold him something.
I'm talking about Pesach.
No, now we switched back to Shabbat.
Okay, but what about Pesach?
Pesach-wise, you don't. Well, technically, if the non-Jew brings chametz in your house, if it doesn't touch anything in your house, it doesn't affect your house. But you shouldn't. It's not such a good idea to have chametz coming in your house on Pesach. That's for sure. Yeah, that's for sure. But this is talking about where you serve the food. It's a regular Shabbat. It's not Pesach. All right, So now it says like this, why do you need both cases? Why do you need the case of feeding a dog and you have the case of feeding the poor? So, it's the same case. That you might have thought to yourself, if a dog comes, you have no choice, you have to feed the dog. The dog doesn't have any, you have to take care of the dog. But if the non-Jewish people come, you can tell them, please come back tomorrow. You don't have a responsibility to feed them, and therefore you shouldn't have to give them food that they're then going to carry out of your domain on Shabbat. So the answer is no, that we say that even the non-Jewish poor who come on Shabbat are also your responsibility. You should serve them the food right away and give it to them. It's not considered, as Tosafot says, it's not considered an unnecessary hassle to do it on Shabbat that's going to take away from your Shabbat that you're serving food to these people. Rather, you should serve them, and if they carry the food with them out, it's not your problem. The rabbis taught, a person should not lend or rent out their vessels to a non-Jew on Erev Shabbat, but on Wednesday or Thursday it's okay. So kayotzebo, similarly, ein mishalachin igrot biyad nochrei be'erev Shabbat. You shouldn't send a letter on Erev Shabbat in the hands of a non-Jew. But on Wednesday or Thursday it's okay. Amru alav al Rabbi Yossi HaKohen va'amre la al Rabbi Yossi HaChasid. They said about Rabbi Yossi HaKohen, and some said that it was said about Rabbi Yossi HaChasid, shelo nimtzach ketav yado b'yad nochrei me'olam, that they never found a letter of his in the hand of a non-Jew. What does that mean? It means he never wanted to use a non-Jew as a courier because he was worried that they might transport his materials on Shabbat, and therefore he preferred not to use them as a courier. Now, there's an interesting issue here, which is that there's a machloket here in the commentaries about this halacha. Because why is it? Remember, Beit Hillel said you can give something to a non-Jew as long as it's ima shemesh, as long as it's before sunset, as long as they're able to get off of your property, so to speak, before Shabbat starts. So for that reason, the Rif and the Rambam and the Shulchan Aruch all say this halacha is only according to Beit Shammai. This halacha that you can't rent your vessels to the non-Jew on Erev Shabbat, that's only according to Beit Shammai.
Didn't we already learn you're not supposed to let your kli work? Isn't that part of that?
That's all according to Beit Shammai. Right. So that's exactly. So according to the Rif and the Rambam, they say that this halacha doesn't apply to us because it's only according to Beit Shammai. This whole thing about not renting things out to the non-Jew, he's going to work with them on Shabbat. However, there's another interpretation. There's a competing interpretation that says no, even according to Beit Hillel, this could be a problem because it looks like you're making money on Shabbat. Because what did you do? You rented out your stuff to be used on Shabbat. So you're making business on Shabbat because the guy's going to rent, he's going to borrow your vessel on Shabbat. He's paying you by the hour or something like that. And he's going to come back and he's going to say, thanks a lot for letting me use your vessel on Shabbat. So you were basically working from a distance on Shabbat because you were renting out your items. So that's the issue that they say you could square it even with Beit Hillel. However, it comes in the Shulchan Aruch that we do not hold like this rule. We do not say that you can't rent out your stuff to a non-Jew on Erev Shabbat. It is allowed except according to Beit Shammai. However, the one thing you can't do is you cannot rent a beast of burden or an animal to a non-Jew for use on Shabbat, because your animal is obligated to rest just like you are. So if it's your animal, shevitat behemto, everybody agrees your animal is obligated to, or you're obligated to make sure your animal rests on Shabbat. So if the non-Jew goes and takes your animal and is using it to work on Shabbat, that's your violation, because you're not making sure that your animal rests on Shabbat.
But not your keli, this whole
Right, that not. Right, the vessel is only Beit Shammai. So now we say, Tanu Rav Nan, the rabbis taught, Ein mishalchin egeret v'yad nochri b'erev Shabbat, ela imken kotetz lo damim. It says you can't send a letter in the hands of a non-Jew on Erev Shabbat unless you establish a price. In other words, you're paying him a fixed rate for taking it. So what Rashi says is, because when he does this, in other words, when he carries the letter for you, he's your shaliach, he's your messenger. But the kevan de kotetz lo damim b'didei tarach. But if you set a price, why is he doing this? He's doing it for himself. He's doing it to make the money. So since he's doing it to make the money, he's not doing it as an extension of you. He's doing it for self-interest. This is capitalism, right? So since you told him, I'm going to pay you $10 to take this letter over to the next town, he's doing it for the $10. He's not doing it for you. He couldn't care less about you.
So if you put a letter
he just wants the money.
on Friday afternoon,
that's the same thing. You put a stamp on it, right? So you paid for it. That's it. We were talking about that yesterday. Yeah. So you put a stamp on it. So most of the poskim say it's okay because you paid in advance. You paid the money. They decide to pick it up, but if they decide to pick it up late and it's almost Shabbat, that's not your problem. You paid for it. You put the stamp on. So that's the opener. The opener is you can only send the letter if you pay money. But Beit Shammai omrim kedesh yagil lebeito. That Beit Shammai says only if he's going to reach his destination before Shabbat. Or Beit Hillel omrim kedesh yagil lebayit samuch lechoma. That he has to be able to reach at least the city that he's going to. So let's say you sent the letter to Bethesda. He has to at least make it to Bethesda in time. Alright, maybe he's not going to make it to the house of the person you sent it to, but at least he'll make it to the town. Okay? So, that's the machloket. So the Gemara says, wait a second, but first you said that as long as he's not doing it for you, as long as you established a price, you paid him money, it doesn't matter. You can send him on Erev Shabbat. Now you're saying, no, he has to get there in time. If he's going to get there in time, what difference does it make? Why do you have to pay money? Right? So the Gemara says no. That it goes like this. Amar Rav Sheshedachi Kama, this is what it means. If you paid him money in advance, it's no problem. But if you didn't establish a price there, Beit Shammai omrim ad sheyagil lebeito, that Beit Shammai says until he has to have enough time that he's going to reach the destination of the person, the addressee of the letter in time. Beit Hillel omrim ad sheyagil lebayit samuch lechoma, that according to Beit Hillel he has to reach the city in which the person who the letter is addressed to lives. Okay, so this is the machloket. When you didn't pay. So when you just sent somebody as a messenger, he has to get there within a certain amount of time, according to Beit Shammai and according to Beit Hillel. When you paid money, then it's not your responsibility anymore. He's doing it for himself, and it doesn't matter when he arrives. Rashi says, actually, according to Beit Shammai, that even when you pay him money, it doesn't help. That Beit Shammai is actually stringent in all cases. Beit Shammai is going to say, even if you paid him money, okay, that he's going for his own personal reasons, and he has to reach the destination in time. All these questions are only about Beit Hillel. What are Beit Hillel's parameters? First it says you're not allowed to send a letter unless you pay money. Then it says you're not allowed to send a letter unless you get there in time. So the way that it's broken down is like this. If you paid money according to Beit Hillel, we don't care when he gets there. If you didn't pay money, he has to get there within the reasonable time. Okay, he has to get to the city in time. That's how they're learning it now. But first you said you can't send it unless you paid money. So so it seems to be saying three contradictory things. Because first it says you can't send it unless you paid money. Then it says Beit Shammai says unless he reaches the destination, and Beit Hillel says unless he reaches the city. And you're saying that means when you didn't pay money. So why did it start out by saying you can't send a letter unless you paid money? And then say Beit Shammai gives another rule and Beit Hillel gives another rule for when you didn't pay money. When you first said that when you didn't pay money, you can't send it at all. And then you come back and they give other qualifications. So what's going on here? So actually it's three different situations.
Because that would be a fence inside a fence. That would
Right. Well, it seems like mixed messages, right? Because first it says you can't send the letter unless you paid. Then it says wait. Beit Shammai says this, and Beit Hillel says if he reaches Bethesda in time,
right.
Okay, then even if they didn't pay, it's okay. What do you mean? But before you said in mishalachin.
Right.
So now you're saying that Beit Hillel is contradicting the opening statement.
That's right.
So what's going on? So they say like this lakasha no problem. So what's the basic halacha like this? That according to Beit Hillel, which is the one we care about, because Beit Shammai is going to say he has to reach the addressee no matter what before Shabbat. So according to Beit Hillel, it goes like this: if the person paid in advance, we don't care. We don't care. You gave it to your Italian messenger, Catholic. You gave him $10. That's it. You don't care what happens now. He's going to find him. It's not your problem. What if you didn't pay? You just went over to him and he said, "Listen, I want you to take this letter to Bob Smith. Take the letter." Okay, so now Beit Hillel says it depends. If there is a post office in the city. So when he gets to the city, he'll go to the post office and they're going to make sure that it gets to the right place. So then it's no problem. As long as he reaches the post office in time, as long as he reaches the city in time, he can take it to the post office. The post office is going to make sure it gets to the right place. But if there is no post office, we have to be worried that your messenger is going to be walking around all Shabbat long looking for the addressee. He has no idea where he's going because it's chaotic. There's no organized postal service. So that's what it meant in the beginning when it said in mishalachin. You can't send the letter at all on Erev Shabbat.
But that's what Beit Shammai is saying?
No, we're only Beit Shammai says you can always only do it if he gets to the person in time.
Okay.
So Beit Hillel is the only one that has qualifications, and Beit Hillel has three cases.
Okay.
One is you didn't pay him money, but there's a post office. So as long as he can get to this post office in time, it's okay.
Okay, so they both agree that if you're not going to get to the destination in time, or to either destination or post office,
if there's no money exchange,
if there's no money exchange, then you can't do it.
You can't do it, right? So that basically, according to Beit Shammai, and this is according to Beit Hillel, and according to the way it's brought in Shulchan Aruch, there are three levels. If you didn't pay money, so then if there's no post office at the destination city, you can't send him on Erev Shabbat. If you didn't pay money, but there is a post office and he can get to the post office in time, you can still send him.
So that's like COD.
Sort of, yeah.
Because the person who receives it
will pay, perhaps, yeah. Now, and if I guess so, somebody's got to be paying this guy, right? And then if you paid him in advance, you paid him money. So there, it doesn't matter whether there's a post office or not. It doesn't matter anything. All that matters is that you paid him, so he's doing it for himself. The Shulchan Aruch brings another case where he says that actually, even if the non-Jew is doing you a favor. Like he wants to do it. He offers. He says, "Look, can I do you a favor?" Because you know that he's doing it for you because you've done him things. You know, he's paying you back. So it's still transactional. The only problem is when he's a shaliach, where he's your messenger. But if he's doing it as a favor to you, as a gift to you, or he says, "Hey, I'm going to Bethesda anyway," right? So he's not your shaliach. He says, "I'm going to Bethesda anyway. Do you have anything you need me to bring?" Then you can do it. Okay? Then you'd be allowed to do it. The only time you're not allowed to do it is where there's no post office, you didn't pay him, and you're sending him as a messenger. Okay? That's the only time it's a problem.
So if he's going as a good...
Right. Or he works for you, or you know...
He's going as a good guy, or he
wants to do you a favor.
And there's no post office, and you know...
It would still be okay, because it's considered that he's doing it for himself, because for some reason he wants to do you a favor. We don't know why. Probably because he's going to get something out of it later.
It's like the desk clerk in my building buzzing the door open.
Something like that.
He's doing it because that's his job, and he wants to be nice.
He wants to be nice to you.
I'm going to ask him to do it.
Because you're going to tip him at the holidays, and he knows. Probably. Okay. Right? Or whatever. So that's actually the practical halacha. So the Tanur Rabbanan, now incidentally, sending overnight delivery on Friday would not be allowed according to everybody, because you're definitely not allowed to send it and tell them, "I want you to bring it on Shabbat." You're not allowed to do that, because then they're bringing it on Shabbat on your behalf. You told them bring it on Shabbat. So that you're not allowed to do, the Shulchan Aruch says.
So ordering something on Friday.
So FedEx overnight service. Ordering is okay because they're not going to send it to you that quickly. But and if they do, it's not. You weren't expecting
It's
it.
like you can't check off Saturday delivery.
Right.
Right.
But
You can't request.
But obviously you can't tell them send it
overnight. Right. You wouldn't be allowed to send it overnight. Right. So you cannot go on a boat 3 days before Shabbat. So we're assuming it's somewhat of a machloket about what 3 days does that mean. You have to leave Tuesday. Most say you can leave by Wednesday. Okay, so 3 days before Shabbat if you're going to go on a cruise, you're going to go on a boat. Now,
but it's been qualified as
many qualifications.
Ships of nowadays are not.
Don't really go. Yeah. So there's a lot of qualifications. Let's first see the halakha though.
The cruise ships.
So Bamed Dvarim Amorim, where is this stated? Lidvara Rishut. If you're going for enjoyment, you're going for whatever. Aval Lidvar Mitzvah Shapir Dameh. But if you're going for a mitzvah, which by the way, it says in the Mefarshim and in the Shulchan Aruch, if you're going for Parnasah, that's also a mitzvah. If it's business, you have to go, then you're allowed to go. Uposek imo al menat lishbot v'no shovet. Divrei Rabbi, that if you're going on this trip and you know that they're going to be traveling on Shabbat, posek imo lishbot, you should say to the captain, I want you to stop on Shabbat, even though you know he's not going to. Okay, you should agree that he's going to. Rabban Shimon Gamliel Omer eno tzarich. Rabban Shimon Gamliel says you don't need to. And if it's a small trip, like you're taking the ferry, basically, like today that would be the ferry. You're just going like a half-hour trip, an hour. If it's Gilligan, and it's a 3-hour tour, maybe not. We don't know. But if it's just a tour, if it's just a trip, short trip for commerce, like they used to go to the shuk and they would take a boat for a half hour or an hour nearby, it's no different than driving to a nearby place to shop for Shabbat. It's no problem.
Ferry from Turkey would be a problem.
That would be a problem. If you're going to break it on the flotilla, you don't know to do that. So but what's the point? So there are several different reasons given for what this halakha, why this halakha is. Why can you not travel on a boat and you have to go 3 days before Shabbat? So there are a number of reasons. The codified reason in the Shulchan Aruch, which is what the Rif says and what the Rambam says, is it's because of oneg Shabbat. Because a person goes on a boat and they get seasick the first couple of days because they're not used to the boats. So if you go on Erev Shabbat, you're not going to enjoy Shabbat. It's bitul oneg Shabbat. You're going to ruin the oneg Shabbat because you're going to be nauseous, you're going to be sick, and that actually happened to us on the way back from Bermuda because they left on Erev Shabbat and it was very bumpy and the night of Shabbat wasn't good. The day of Shabbat was already okay, but the night of Shabbat wasn't good because they left on Friday. I was already on the ship though, yeah. I was on the ship, yeah. So when we left on Sunday. In any case, that's the reason brought in the Shulchan Aruch. There are a couple of other reasons. One is Tichumin, that a person is leaving the boundary that they're allowed to travel on Shabbat, and in order to fix that problem, actually, Rabbeinu Nissim mentions that the custom was that they would go on the boat on Erev Shabbat, they would make Kiddush, they would go on the boat, and then they would go back home, go to sleep, and then they would walk back to the boat on Shabbat, and they would get up. Because they made their area for Shabbat the boat. So in any case, that's one reason, Tichumin. And the other reason that they say is that you're putting yourself in a dangerous situation, that you're going to have to do Chilul Shabbat, either because you know that the crew is going to be violating Shabbat for you because they're non-Jews and you're on the boat, or because you might be endangered and you might need them to take care of you on Shabbat. So within 3 days of Shabbat, where you're already thinking about Shabbat, you should think about not creating a circumstance where you might be endangered and need to violate Shabbat. But anything earlier than that, you're allowed to. Now, nowadays, cruise ships, like Rabbi Rubin mentioned, are different because, first of all, they're very large boats, so the amount of distress caused by them to the passengers is a lot less, hypothetically. Certainly, if you're traveling on the West Coast, that's true. The East Coast may be a little bit different. The Pacific Ocean is very, very calm. The Atlantic Ocean, maybe not so much, and it depends on the season, and it depends where you're traveling. If you're traveling close to the coast where the waters are relatively calm and predictable, also they say it's less of a. If you're traveling in waters that are less turbulent, then it's like most cruises do, because the purpose is not to travel somewhere because you have to go for commerce. The purpose of a cruise is for it to be calm and enjoyable, and if you're bumping all around, it's not. So generally,
no Straits of Magellan or Shabbat.
Right, exactly. So any place that's bumpy and rough, you wouldn't go on Erev Shabbat. But nowadays that we're saying that we go on a calm cruise, so even Erev Shabbat it might be okay. These are the caveats that are attached to this halacha. So Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbi similarly taught, you shouldn't start a war against a non-Jewish city 3 days before Shabbat. Before that, Tuesday it's okay. But if you start the war, don't stop. Don't say, what is Shabbat? We have to stop now. That's not a good idea. Because it says when you're in a war with the Gentile nations, until you overcome them, until you defeat them. In other words, once you're engaged in a war, there's no stopping. There's no time out for Shabbat. That doesn't work. Although during the Civil War they stopped, but that was a civil war. In a war that's not so civil, you can't stop for Shabbat. So that's the halacha. And again, similar idea. Once you're 3 days within Shabbat, you should already be thinking about Shabbat. And you should be saying to yourself, do I want to be involved in this kind of activity on Shabbat? So you shouldn't start the war Wednesday and on. Tanya, it says in a Braita, and this is going on, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel had said that he used to bring the white clothing to the koves, to the cleaners 3 days before Shabbat, because it took 3 days to clean. And he didn't want them doing it on Shabbat for him. Tanya, the Braita says, Amar Rabbi Tzadok. Rabbi Tzadok said, Kach haya min hagush bet Rabban Gamliel. This was the custom of the house of Rabban Gamliel. Shayu notnim klei lavan lakoves, gemu yamim kodem laShabbat, utzvoim afilu be'erev Shabbat. They would give their colored clothing even on Friday to the cleaner, because that was quick. They would do that in 1 day. It was same day service like we have here in the cleaner. Right. But Klei Lavan, the white clothing that was very fine, it took them 3 days to clean it, and therefore he had to bring it by Wednesday.
So if I go into the cleaners here, the one-day cleaners on Friday morning, I just missed the 9 o'clock deadline, or whatever, it says it's going to be ready tomorrow, Saturday.
Right.
And I know I'm not going to pick it up, and I don't care.
Right.
I'm going to be... Should I?
You gave it to them in advance. It's okay. You paid
so
them
it doesn't
in
matter.
advance.
So I don't have
it's their choice if they don't want to clean it.
But you could also just say, okay, I'm not interested.
Right.
I'll pick it up Monday.
Yeah, you pick it up Monday anyway.
I'll pick it up Monday.
That's what I was getting at.
Right.
Even though I know that.
Right. You're picking it up Monday anyway.
Yeah, okay,
But you're paying them. You brought it in with enough time for them to do it. If they choose not to do it until the next day, it's not your problem anyway. So. And from their words we learned that it's harder to wash white clothes than colored clothes. Now why is that an important halacha? We're going to see in a second. Because saving money is an important halacha. Because once Abaye brought his colored clothing to the cleaner, Amarle said to him, how much do you want for it? How much do I owe you for this cleaning? Amarle said to him, the same that you paid me for the white clothing. Abaye says, hey, wait a second. Amarle kvar kadmucha rabanan. The rabbis already preempted you because they told me that the white clothing is way more expensive. I'm not going to pay you the same you're trying to rip me off. Okay, if I paid $3 for the white, then I should only pay $1 for the colored one because it's a third as difficult to clean it. And you're trying to rip me off, charging me the same amount as I paid for the white. So Amar Bayabai said, Hai man diyahiv manala katra. He says if a person brings clothing to the cleeners, b'mashchan netevle or b'mashchan nishkol mine, he should measure it when he gives it to him and measure it when he gets it back. Because de'i tefe afsedeh, because if when it comes back it's too long, that's because he stretched it. The cleaner stretched it too far. And if it comes back shorter, that means that he cut it or he shrunk it. So you should always make sure you get back exactly what you give to the cleaners and they don't take advantage of you. What? Well, you know what I find? Sometimes I get from the cleaners stains that weren't on the clothes when I gave it to them. I said, could you clean this stain? It comes back with a different stain. How did that happen?
But shrinking and expensive when you put in one.
With no charge.
No control.
Right, no, that's true. That's true. That's true.
We have signs up there because people have complained. People were concerned about that.
Yeah. So vishavin elov eloshitonin. So now we get to that last part of the Mishnah that said that even though Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel argue about these melachot, that starting them, these melachot that continue into Shabbat, they agree that you can place these boards, what they used to have was, when they would crush the olives or the grapes to extract the liquid, they would put boards on over them to weights that would squeeze every last drop out. So they were allowed to do that, even according to Beit Shammai. Even though Beit Shammai would say that you normally cannot leave a malacha going on Friday through Shabbat, but here even Beit Shammai is going to agree.
You almost overturned that one.
But that's not
where he said, "Don't provoke me."
I'll make it even worse.
Right.
But that's not the olive oil that is wanted.
No, that's not the best.
Olive oil that's wanted is the first
stuff.
To come out. That's the extra virgin.
Right. This is the extra.
This is just the
right. This is the refuse. This is not the best.
Didn't we learn this yesterday and one time before also?
That was about the olives and the grapes and the purity and impurity of what seeps out of them.
Right.
This is talking more about the Shabbat issue, that Beit Shammai would say you can't leave a malacha going on Shabbat.
Okay.
But these malachot you're allowed to. But the Mishnah said that, but it never explained why. So now they're going to explain why. So Ma'ishna kolu de gazru Beit Shammai, or Ma'ishna korot Beit Abad v'igulei agat lo gazru. So why is it that in all other cases Beit Shammai is stringent and he doesn't allow you to leave a malacha going on Erev Shabbat, and over here he is stringent? Hanachti avidu b'Shabbat michayiv chatat gazru b'ur Beit Shammai. Erev Shabbat im chashecha. Korot Beit Abad v'igulei agat avidu b'Shabbat lo mechayev chatat lo gazru. That in all the other cases, if you actually did it on Shabbat yourself, biyadayim, you did it, it would be a biblical violation, such as if you trapped the animal on Shabbat, if you left the food cooking on Shabbat, if you put the food to cook on Shabbat, if you trapped the animal on Shabbat, if you dyed the clothing on Shabbat, any of these things, if you actually did them on Shabbat, they would be a biblical violation. So Beit Shammai says even on Erev Shabbat you can't leave it going on Erev Shabbat. But here, even if you were to put these extra weights on these olives or grapes, whatever additional stuff is squeezed out, it's not biblically significant. It wouldn't be chayav chatat. It wouldn't be a biblical violation of Shabbat. Who is it that says that whatever would come out by itself, in other words, whatever really you're squeezing is additional, it's superfluous, it's not necessary here. So who is the one that says that that's not significant, that additional stuff that will seep out of the olives or grapes anyway, and you're just putting weights on it to facilitate the process? Who is it that says that's not significant? That is Amar Rav says Yosi Rabbi Chanina. I'm sorry, no. Amar Rav Yosef Bar Chanina. Rav Yosef Bar Chanina says Rabbi Ishmael. It's Rabbi Ishmael. Titnan, as it says in the Mishnah. Hashum ve'aboser v'amelilot. If you had garlic, or you had unripe grapes, or you had some kind of unripe grain in its stalk, the juice could be squeezed out of it. That you crushed them before Shabbat. So Rabbi Ishmael Omer Yigmor Mishetechshach. According to Rabbi Ishmael, you can finish after dark. In other words, what that means is you can, since you already crushed them before, and if you just were to leave them in a bowl, whatever juice is left will eventually seep out anyway. So it's no problem to squeeze out what's left. That's how Rashi interprets it. Tosafot interprets it differently, that it means you can drink what seeps out of them, even though normally that might be an issue.
It's not a case where you don't want the additional juice that comes out because you're collecting it.
You're collecting.
You are collecting it.
Just that it would come out naturally, and so the question is, can you squeeze the rest out? Since it's going to come out anyway.
Right.
But you can't squeeze a grape, because if you just leave the grape there, it's not going to give you its juice. You can't convince it. You can't talk it into giving its juice.
We started crushing and pressing these olives.
These are already pre-crushed. Right. So that's exactly what Rabbi Shmuel says. Rabbi Akiva says, if we turn to Amud Bet, Lo Yigmor. Rabbi Akiva says you cannot. Because and Rashi says actually you can't even place them under boards to squeeze out the rest before Shabbat, because there's a concern that if you do this you may come to violate Shabbat in a biblical way. But what do we see here? We see that Rabbi Ishmael is the one that says it's no problem, that you can apparently even squeeze out on Shabbat whatever is left in these fruits. Although Tosafot comes along and says no, that's not exactly correct. He says that's one possibility. The other possibility is that it just means you can drink. You can drink or suck out the juice that's left inside of these fruits. Not that you can actually squeeze them out. But anyway, in any case, Rabbi Elazar says that no. So the view of Beit Shammai that seems like Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel both agree that these pre-crushed olives and these pre-crushed grapes, squeezing out the remainder is not not a biblical violation. And where do we get that from? From Rabbi Yishmael. Because Rabbi Yishmael is the one that says that if you had these pre-crushed things and you squeeze out the rest, it's no problem. But Rabbi Elazar gives another source. Rabbi Elazar, it's not Chalot Dvash Riskan Be'erev Shabbat V'yatzu Me'atzman Asur. That if you had honeycombs that were broken up before Shabbat and the honey seeped out on Shabbat, you're not allowed to take it because we're concerned that you'll break it on Shabbat. If you take what seeps out of it, even when it's been broken before Shabbat, we're worried that you might break a honeycomb on Shabbat itself. Rabbi Elazar matir, but Rabbi Elazar says it's fine because according to Rabbi Elazar, even what would seep out, even if you were to do it on Shabbat, it wouldn't really be a biblical violation. Because it's
the breaking, not the seeping.
Right. Because it's the extracting. It's the extracting that is the issue.
No, but the concern is the breaking.
Yeah, you're worried about you're going to break it.
No, it's not. The breaking is only significant because you're causing the honey to seep out. Because it's dash, it's the malacha of dash, which is extracting the liquid from inside. Okay. Just like when you extract the liquid from inside the grape or from inside the olive. So that's really the problem. It's not the breaking per se. So for Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Chanina, so according to Rabbi Elazar, this is the source that the Rabbi Elazar in the Mishnah is the source for Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai, because Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai there's two Rabbi Elazars here. There's the Rabbi Elazar that brings the proof and the Rabbi Elazar that's in the proof. Okay, the Rabbi Elazar that brings the proof is the Amorah Rabbi Elazar. The Rabbi Elazar that's in the Mishnah is the Rabbi Elazar from whom the proof is actually being brought, is the one that says that you can drink the honey or you can use the honey that seeps out of the honeycombs that were broken before Shabbat. Apparently, even if you were to squeeze them out, since they had already been broken open before Shabbat, since squeezing out more wouldn't be a biblical violation anyway, so you're allowed to drink whatever seeps out by itself. Whereas according to the Tanakh Kama there, according to the first Tanakh, apparently even squeezing it out, even when it's already been broken, would be a concern on Shabbat. And therefore, you're not allowed to drink what seeps out of it on Shabbat. So, Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Chanina, so why do we need two proofs for this halacha? We first had the proof from the case of the pre-crushed olives the pre-crushed unripe grapes and grain, that Rabbi Yishmael said it was okay to finish, to extract the rest from them. Okay, so why do we need that proof? And then another proof from the honeycomb. Why do we need two? Why doesn't the first proof, just the first person, Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina, just go with this proof of the honeycombs? Why didn't he go with it? So, because over here by the honeycombs, we treat honey as a food. Honey's a food. So therefore, what did you do? You extracted a food from a food. It's like taking peanut butter out of your peanut butter sandwich. That's not anything new. I'm showing you a proof where you had grapes that you extracted juice. That's the malacha, extracting juice from the grapes. Honeycomb, it's food from a food.
It's honey from
the comb. Right. They're both considered solid. They're not considered to be. It's not considered to be a liquid coming out. For Rabbi Elazar Amarlach, Rabbi Elazar will say, the reason why I brought my proof from Rabbi Elazar in the Mishnah, where he talks about honeycombs, is because actually Rabbi Elazar even applies this to olives and grapes. Because when Rav Hoshaya came from Nahar Da'ah, he brought a tosefta, he brought a braita in his hands. Zaitim vanavim shiriskan me'erev Shabbat, that if you have olives and grapes that were crushed from before Shabbat, v'yatzu me'atzman, and they continue seeping out juice and oil on Shabbat, asurin, you shouldn't partake of the juice and oil on Shabbat because you might squeeze them more on Shabbat itself. For Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon matirin, but Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon allow it. So what does that show you? Not only does Rabbi Elazar say that the pre-crushed honeycomb, you can drink the honey from that, and it's no problem, because we're not concerned that you're going to squeeze out more. So too with olives and grapes, he says explicitly that you can partake of the juice that seeps out, because since those grapes and olives were pre-crushed, we're not concerned about you squeezing it out more. So that's an open proof. That's exactly what we're talking about here. Why did Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina go with his proof about the unripe grapes and the unripe grain? Because he had never heard this baraita before. This baraita is explicit. Of course he would have taken it. For Rabbi Elazar, why didn't Rabbi Elazar go with Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina and bring the proof from the first case where the unripe grapes or the unripe grain is squeezed. Why didn't he bring that proof? Before he had the Braita, why did he bring the proof from the honeycombs? Amar lach lavit marala, because it was already stated there. Amar Rav bar Chanina, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. The Rav bar Chanina said, the Rabbi Yochanan said, B'mchusarin dichad u'cholayam v'lo pligay, ki pligay b'mchusarin shachika, v'aneinami ki mchusarin dichadamu. The reason is because there are different stages of squeezing or crushing these fruits. The first one is called dicha, which you might call dicing, okay, breaking it up, or it's the first stage of crushing, okay, and then you have shechika, which is the really intense crushing, which is the final crushing. So what were they talking about in that Mishnah? They were talking about fruits that are cut up, that are crushed at the first stage of crushing, but not at the second stage yet. Okay, but here in the Mishnah we're dealing with, in other words, Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel. You could argue that true in that proof that you brought from the unripe grapes and the unripe grain, where we said that Rabbi Ishmael said you can even squeeze out the rest. That was talking about where it was very well crushed already. And we're just talking about the final touches, putting the final touches on the crushing. But Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel and the Mishnah are talking about where it isn't crushed all so much yet. So how do you know that even in that case, it's not a biblical violation? And that's why I had to bring a different source. I had to bring a source where even though it's not as fully crushed, it's still not considered a biblical violation to finish the process. Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Chanina, Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Chanina ruled like Rabbi Yishmael that basically a person who has these pre-crushed things is allowed to finish crushing them and squeeze out the rest on Shabbat. Shemen shel badadin. Rav Asar Ushmuel Shareh. That, what is it talking about? It's talking about oil that is the oil that's left after the process of crushing is done. This is oil that is generally found on the bottom of it's like what's left in the corners of the oil press when you've taken all the oil that you actually want, the residue oil. Okay, that oil or the coverings that they would place. The machatzalot shel badadin are the coverings that they would put over merchandise, over the oil, over the olives that they were in the process of crushing, or that they were going to crush. They hadn't been crushed yet. So these things, Rav Asaru Shmuel Shareh. Rav says that they are muktzeh on Shabbat. Shmuel says they're not muktzeh. Why would they be muktzeh on Shabbat? Because since that oil that was left, that residue in the olive press, you never planned to use it. You never planned to eat it. So you could say that it's something you pushed out of your mind for Shabbat. Similarly, those coverings that are used to cover the olives, let's say all of a sudden you want to use them as a mat on the floor. But the fact is they were designated to be used for covering the olives, which are only for non-Shabbat use. Only for non-Shabbat use, because you're going to be squeezing them, you're going to be extracting oil from them. So therefore those mats are designated for a non-Shabbat use. So Rav says you can't touch them on Shabbat, they're muktzeh on Shabbat. Shmuel says if you have a use for them on Shabbat, you can use them. And Hanei Kurache de Zuzeh, similarly, these mats or these covers that were placed, they would have these double flaps, sort of, that they would put over merchandise for sale. So that's designated obviously for a non-Shabbat use, because the purpose of that cover is to cover merchandise that's going to be sold. But still, let's say you had a use for it on Shabbat. Rav Asar Shmuel Shareh. Again, Rav is going to say since they're designated for a non-Shabbat use, they cannot be used on Shabbat, even if you have a use for them. Shmuel says it's okay. Amar Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman says, Ez lachalava, v'rachel legizata, v'tarnegol lebetzata, v'torei deridaya, v'utmarei deiska. So let's say the following cases. You have a goat, which is a milking goat. It's a dairy goat. Okay, you have a sheep, which is usually used for its shearings. You have a chicken, which is an egg-laying chicken. Okay, in all these cases, these are animals that we're talking about Yom Tov now. These are animals that normally are for a commercial purpose. You're not usually going to eat this goat because you use it for its milk. You're not going to eat this chicken because you use it for eggs. You're not going to eat this sheep because you use it for the shearings. Okay, V'torei deredaya, or you have an ox that is for plowing. So you're not going to eat him because you want him for plowing. Utmarei de iska, or you have dates that are used for selling. You're planning on selling the dates. And now comes Yom Tov and you say, you know what? I'm really in the mood for an ox hamburger. Let's take the ox that works in the field and we'll slaughter it. You're allowed to slaughter on Yom Tov. You're allowed to do shechita. Or you take the chicken, you say, you know what, this chicken was for eggs, but I want some chicken for dinner on Yom Tov. I want to slaughter it. So in those cases, or you see those dates that you had set aside for selling, but it's Yom Tov, or that could apply to Shabbat too, and you want to partake of the dates. So in these cases, Rav Asar Ushmuel Amar Mutar. So in those cases again, Rav prohibits. He says, you know what, they were designated for a non-Yom Tov use. Either plowing or egg laying or whatever. They were not designated for food. You can't now use them for food. Shmuel says it's okay to change the designation on Shabbat or Yom Tov. And they're arguing in the argument of Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Yehuda has a very stringent view of Muktzeh. And Rabbi Shimon has a very lenient view of Muktzeh. This is throughout Masekhet Shabbat, we're going to see this a lot. Throughout Masekhet Beitzah also, we're going to see it a lot. That Rabbi Shimon is lenient about Muktzeh, or in the language of the Talmud, En letle Muktzeh. They say he doesn't hold by Muktzeh at all. He has such a lenient view of what Muktzeh is. And Rabbi Yehuda is very stringent. So Rav is holding like Rabbi Yehuda and saying anything designated for a non-holiday use, that's it. You can't now change the designation. It's out of your mind for Shabbat. It's out of your mind for Yom Tov. You didn't plan on using it. You can't use it.
So it sounds like in Halacha we go with Rabbi Yehuda, not Rabbi Shimon.
Well, it's more complicated. It's pretty complicated. Actually, it turns out that we're lenient about Rabbi Shimon. We're going to see. How tell me that the Orei bechartad argiz ke Rabbi Shimon? There was a certain student who ruled like Rabbi Shimon in Chartad Argiz, where he was teaching. Shamete Rav Hamnuna put him in cherem. He excommunicated him. V'haka Rabbi Shimon Tzviralan. Why did he excommunicate him? All the rabbis held like Rabbi Shimon. The consensus was like Rabbi Shimon. So why did they excommunicate him? Answer: Be'atre de Rav Hava. Because that was in the jurisdiction of Rav. Chartad Argiz was near Rav's area. Lo ibayle lemeh hachi, and it wasn't appropriate to do that. Look at how amazing it was. Could you imagine that today? Wow. The rabbis are putting people in cherem across the world, and then for all kinds of things. And even though they didn't agree with Rav, they excommunicated somebody for disagreeing with the Marad Atra because he was the rabbi of that area. Even though they disagreed with him, they defended him. Imagine that today. Now they just based on the disagreements alone, they excommunicate each other. They would have excommunicated Rav, and they would have given a promotion to the guy who went against him today. But back then, that was how they operated. They cared about supporting the system. So Trei Talmidei. There were two students. What this is talking about is we're going to learn in the 16th parak of Masekhet Shabbat that if God forbid there's a fire on Shabbat, the halacha was you can't put out the fire. Now nowadays we don't apply this. Nowadays we do something called calling the fire department. Very important. Back then, houses were separated from each other. There wasn't as much of a concern about pikuach nefesh. Now, if there's a fire in a house, the whole neighborhood can go up in flames. It's a different story. The halacha was that you couldn't put out the fire. You could only save the food for one meal, or as much food as you could put in one basket. Why didn't they want you to save all of your stuff? After all, you lived in courtyards, so there was no problem of carrying into the courtyard. Why couldn't you save all your stuff? Because they said, Adam bahul al mamono, a person will get very, very excited about their money, about their property, and they'll end up putting out the fire and violating Shabbat. So they said, just take what you need. Don't take everything that you have. So it says that one student would saved whatever he could fit in one basket, and one saved in 4 or 5 baskets. Rashi says what it means is he put things in 4 or 5 baskets and then he folded them all into one big basket. So one said you can only use one basket. That's it. One said you can use 4 or 5 baskets and then consolidate them, put in one big basket. So and they were arguing about the argument between Rav Bar Zavda and Rav Huna. And now, incidentally, this has absolutely nothing apparently to do with the preceding discussion in the Gemara, except that you have two different students, each choosing one opinion of the two, just like Rav, and you had this other student with the different opinions, and Rav and Shmuel with their various opinions. So you had two different views. That's how Rashi interprets what their difference was. That one of them put everything in one basket, and one took 4 or 5 baskets and then put them in a really large basket and thought that was okay. The first one said you can't do that. That's cheating. It's one basket means one basket. That's how Rashi interprets it.
Trying to get on the airplane nowadays.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, Tosafot has a different way of interpreting this issue here. He says that's not really the machloket. That machloket is Rabbeinu Tam says that's not what the machloket was. They didn't argue about that over there. Everybody agrees whatever you can fit in the one basket, even if it's multiple baskets, it's no problem. So what does Rabbeinu Tam say? This is the end of the last Tosafot here. That he said that you can put as much as you want in one vessel, even 100 meals, but not, in other words, quantitatively. So you can't go in and out, saving the same amount. But if you can, with one fell swoop, fit everything into one basket, it's okay. V'chad matzil bedalad ve'emanei lo'oto chatzer uba plige hatam Rabba bar Zavda Rafuna, that the machlok between Rabba bar Zavda and Rafuna was, could you bring out quantitatively the same amount, but in different shifts? In other words, if one guy's going to be able to bring out 100 seudot in his one vessel, and I can do the same I'm bringing it to the same chatzer. I'm not going to take it out of the courtyard. I'm going to bring it to the same place, but it's going to take me 4 times in and out to bring the same amount. Am I allowed to do it? That's what the machloket was, according to Rabbeinu Tam, between these two opinions, whether one is allowed to go back and forth in shifts, as long as you're bringing it all to the same spot, and you're bringing the same total quantity. Is it okay to do it in shifts as opposed to in one act of taking out? And that concludes our daf for today. Have a great day. We'll start with the Mishnah, Be'ezrat Hashem.